Good afternoon. So in the lab, we have discussed the four exercises. We have demonstrated the four exercises. So first exercise we have already demonstrated. That is to print the primitive data types and to print the roots of the quadratic equation and then some racing five bikers. So then we have seen the binary search program, bubble sort program, match sort program, and then string buffer. By using the string buffer class to delete a character from a string, that we have seen, and then class mechanism to implement the class mechanism. That means a syntax for creation of the class and the creation of the variables, instance variables, and the methods that we have seen, and then implementation of the constructor. So we have seen the implementation also. To initialize the variables, we will use the constructor. Constructor name and class name are the same. And we have seen the constructor overloading as well as the method overloading. So constructor overloading and method overloading. That means the constructor name is same, but the signature is different. We have, suppose for example, we have 5 constructors. So 5 constructors names are same, but the parameter list is different. Return type is different. So same as method overloading. That means the method name is same here, but the parameter list is different. Parameter list is different. That means signature is different. So that type of mechanisms are known as overloading. If it is a method, then it is a method overloading. If it is a constructor, then we can call it as a constructor overloading. So up to this we have demonstrated. So let us move to the next exercises. So all of you written the observation and practice the programs. So while coming to the college, you have to submit the observation as well as the record. So start writing the observation. So next exercise is fifth exercise. Fifth exercise of it consists of interfaces, inheritance concepts. The programs regarding the inheritance concepts. So the first program is to implement the single inheritance. Second program is multi-level inheritance. And the third program is abstract classes. Abstract classes. So let us see the each program one by one. So first one is single inheritance. So what do you mean by single inheritance? So what do you mean by single inheritance? Suppose I am defining the class CL here. I am defining the class A. And I am defining the class B. So the class B extends the properties from class A. The class B extends the properties from class A. That means the methods or variable which are defined in that class, those may be used by the class B. That is the meaning of the inheritance. That is the meaning of the inheritance. So here we can use the keyword extends. So this is the single inheritance. Single superclass, single subclass. Single superclass and single subclass. So this type of inheritance is called single inheritance. Next one, multi-level inheritance. So multi-level inheritance means we have the base class A. We have the subclass B. The class B extends class A. And then I'm defining another class C. Class C extends class B. Class C extends class B. This type of inheritance is known as multi-level inheritance. Multi-level inheritance. So class A is base class here. Class B is subclass here. But here class B is base class here. Here class B is subclass. So this type of relationships are known as multi-level inheritance. That means, so multi-level inheritance is identified by this thing. So here B. So here B is a subclass. And then here B is a superclass. So in between, suppose treat this as level 1, level 2, level 3. Suppose we have the three levels of inheritance. In the previous level, class B is a superclass. In the present level, class B is a subclass. That means here see this class A, class A. And then next level class C, class C. Here class C is the subclass, but here class C is the superclass. So those type of relationships are known as multi-level inheritance. Next one, abstract class. Abstract class. So abstract class is nothing but the class which has the abstract methods. The class which consists of the abstract methods are known as abstract class. So abstract methods means the method which has no definition. The method which has no definition. Simply the method header only defined. We can define only the method header. We don't define the body of the method. Those type of methods are known as abstract method. The class which consists of the abstract methods are known as abstract class. So abstract class is represented by the keyword abstract. So this is the theory about the exercise 5. So let us demonstrate this one. So first one is single inheritance. So let us check this program. So here I am importing the IO package, and then I am defining the class. The class name is inherit single. That means single inheritance. That's why I have given the name inherit single. This is the class name. So this is the class I have defined. So in the class consists of the class members. The class members are either variables or constructors or methods or interfaces. All these things are the class members. So here I am defining one variable str. Str is a variable of type string. Data type is string. It is a non-primitive data type. String is a non-primitive data type. So it is a class name. So I am defining the variable str of type string. So its access specifier is protected. So you can declare it as public also. Next, I am defining a constructor. I am defining the constructor. That means class name. So here, see, check here. The class name as well as the constructor name is same. So the constructor, the main purpose of constructor is to initialize the variable, So I have defined the variable string. Here I am going to initializing the string. I am going to initializing the string as Java. That is the string I want to store. So this is the constructor. So this inherit single class consists of the one constructor, one initialization. So this output is Java. This will be printed. If you write any printf statement, so it will be printed. So this is the one class. So this is the one class. So next I am defining the another class. The class name is subclass. Here I am going to define the another class, subclass, which extends the properties from inherit single. Which extends the properties from inherit single. It means that the class subclass can utilize the variable string, can utilize the variable string, can utilize the properties, of the inherit single class. That is the meaning of the extends. That is the meaning of the inheritance. Here subclass is this one. Superclass is inherit single. So this subclass is going to inheriting the properties from inherit single class. So this is the subclass I am going to define. So in this, I am going to define another string. another constructor. So the constructor name is subclass. The constructor name and class name are same. I am defining the constructor. So str is a variable. So already str variable is defined in the superclass. So there is no need to declare again str. There is no need to define again str. Already str is defined in the superclass. We just we have inheriting the properties from the superclass, so we can directly declare the variable, directly use that variable. The variable is str. So we have seen some methods in the string handling. That is, we are using the class string. So for joining the two or more strings, we can use the string concatenation concat method. Str dot concat. I am concating java with the word, java word. So here the initially string has java. Now I am adding some another string to the java. That second string is world. So I am adding this to the this one java. So that's why for adding two strings, we can use the concatenation operation, concatenation method. So we have the predefined concat method. So I am applying the concat method on the string str. So this is the constructor I have defined. And then I am defining some, I am defining another method. I am defining the method display. I am defining the method display. So in this I am printing the str. So in this I am printing the str. So display is a method here. Next one. So next I am defining another class. So here I am defining the another class, single inheritance. So this is the main class. This is the driver class here. Why? Because it has the main method. It has the main method. So the program execution starts from main method. So this is the main method. So here I am going to define the some object of the class subclass of the class subclass. So this is the definition of this is the creation of the object. This is the syntax for creation of the object. So I am creating a reference for the class. Here the class, we have so many classes, but I am giving reference to this subclass. So why? Because so it consists of the display method. It consists of the display method. Now I want to access this display method. Now I want to access this display method. In order to access this display method, we need an object. That's why I have created the object here. So obj.display, obj.display. So this will be displayed. str will be displayed. In the str, we have Java world that will be displayed. Let us check the output. Java C. The program name is single inheritance.java. So no errors. So this is the output. Java world. The two strings are concatenated and printed. Java and second one is word. So this is the output. This is the output. So here we are printing the str. So the str consists of Java along with the world, Java world, that will be printed here. So this is the program to illustrate the single inheritance. That means we have this single base class and single subclass. We have only two levels. Level 1 is the base class, level 2 is the subclass. We have only two classes here. Then it can be called as single inheritance. That means single superclass, single subclass. So this is the one program, single inheritance. So let us move to second one, that is multi-level inheritance. So let us see that program, multi-level inheritance. So multi-level inheritance. So let us see this one. So here, so this is the program to illustrate the multi-level inheritance. Multi-level inheritance means we have so many levels. So level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Here the superclass is A. Here I am defining the class B. Here I am defining the class C. In this level I am defining the class C. So while defining the class B, I am going to inherit the properties from A. So class B extends class C. Next, while coming to the next level, class C extends class B. That means the class C can utilize the class members defined by the class B. Next, class D extends the properties from class C. So this is the multi-level inheritance. This is the multi-level inheritance. We have multiple levels of inheritance. So here class D extends class C. Here class C extends class B. Here class B extends class C. So we have various levels of inheritance. So this type of implementation is known as multi-level inheritance. Java does not support the multiple inheritance. Multiple inheritance. So there is a difference between multiple inheritance and multi-level inheritance. So multiple inheritance means we have more than one superclass, more than one base class. That is not possible in the Java. So in Java we have only one superclass. In Java we have only one superclass. So we may have the n number of subclasses, but the superclass is only single. So let us check this program. So here I am importing the IO package. Okay, here I am defining the class inherit. The class name is inherit here. Same as previous program. I am defining the some variable str. So I am defining the constructor to initialize that variable. So here the constructor is initialized as JA. Let us make it. So let us check this one. So here I am initializing the string as Java. So this is the class. This is the one class. I have defined the inherit class here. So here I am defining the string value as Java. So this is the one class I have defined. So here I am defining the another class, subclass one. So here I am defining the another class, subclass one, which extends the properties from inheritance. So this class may use the properties from this class. So here I am defining the another constructor, subclass one. So here I am going to concatenate the Java with lab. Java with lab. So the here the output, the string consists of, let us check here. Here str, in the first class str holds the value of Java. Here after concatenation str holds the value of Java lab. Next here I am defining the another class. So here I am defining another class, subclass 2. So which extends the properties from subclass 1. So it inherits the properties from subclass 1. So here subclass 1 is the superclass. Here subclass 2 is the subclass. So here I am initializing the constructor as I am concatenating the constructor that with the programming. That means, so here the string value holds the str is equal to Java lab programming. So this is the value stored in the string str. So these are the three classes I have defined. So inherit is a superclass, subclass 1 is the subclass, subclass 2 is the another subclass. So next, again, I am defining the another constructor, another class, subclass 3. So which extends the properties from subclass 2. So I am initializing the subclass 3 constructor. So the subclass 3 constructor consists of some values, that is, so here while coming to here, str holds the value of Java lab programming. Let us make it as is simple. So here the string consists of Java lab programming is simple. So this is the value the string str stores. So here the str holds the Java lab programming is simple. So here again in the class 3, I am defining the display method. I'm defining the display method. So display method is just printing this value. So this value will be printed. So this is the uh, these are the classes I have defined. I have defined the 3 subclasses, 1 superclass. So each subclass can inherit the properties from the previous defined subclass. So this type of inheritance is known as multi-level inheritance. Next, I am going to define the main class. So multi-level inheritance is the class name, main class name. Why? Because it consists of the main method. So I have used some exception. This class may throw the IO exception. Next, I am creating an object OB of type subclass 3. Of type subclass 3. So I am going to display the string. The display method is in the subclass 3. So that's why I'm creating the object reference for the subclass 3. So I'm invoking the method ob.display. In order to access this method, we need an object. We need an object for this class. That's why I have created the object here. Through this object, I am invoking the method display. So this will be printed as the output. So this is the concept of multi-level inheritance. So let us check the output for it. So Java C program name is multi-level inheritance. So I have not saved the program. Let us save this one and compile. Multi-level inheritance. So the program I think the program is saved in the lab. So here the program is not yet updated. I think updated. So program compile చేయలేదు. So this is the output. So here we got the output. Java programming is simple. So this is the multi-level inheritance. We have seen the single level inheritance and multi-level inheritance. So let us go to the, is it okay? Inheritance concepts. So let us move to the next one. So next one is abstract class. So the demo of the abstract class. So let us check this one. Abstract demo. So abs what do you mean by abstract class? So abstract class is a class. Abstract class is a class which consists of abstract methods. Which consist of abstract methods. That means the square, rectangle, circle, triangle. These are all the methods. But the method has no definition here. The method has no definition here. That means square, some arguments, some definition. So the method can have some body. The body is not defined here. The method has only header here. So these type of methods are known as abstract methods. The methods, uh, the methods which consist, the class which consists of the abstract methods are known as abstract class. So that class may be represented with the keyword abstract. The class may be represented with the keyword abstract. That method may be represented with the keyword abstract. So abstract is a keyword. So this is the class I have defined. So this is the abstract class I have defined. So here I am going to find out the area of the square, area of the rectangle, area of the circle, area of the triangle. So I am going to calculate the area for the 4 different objects. Let us see. I am defining the class A, which extends the properties from class area, which extends the properties from area. That means this class may utilize these methods. So here I am defining the square as square int s. Here I am defining the square as area of the square is s into s. Square means all sides are equal. S square. That means if the side is a square. I'm printing, I am calculating, I am computing the multiplication of sides and printing. So this is the method definition, abstract method definition. I am defining the rectangle. Rectangle means length. Rectangle has length and breadth. So the area of the rectangle is L into B. So I am printing the length into breadth. Circle, area of the circle. So area of the circle means we have the radius pi r square. That is 3.14 into r radius. Next, area of the triangle of BH. So area of the triangle is of BH. So of means 0.5 into breadth into height. So here I have defined all the abstract methods in the class A. In the class A, I have defined all the abstract methods. I have defined all the abstract methods. Now I will define the main class and main methods. So next I am going to create another class, abstract demo. So abstract demo. So this is the main class, driver class. So this is the main method. So which throws the IO exception. So here I am creating an object A1. So here I am creating an object A1. So why? Because these methods, all these methods are all these rectangle, circle, triangle, all these methods are defined in the class A. All these methods are defined in the class A. So that's why I'm going to create the reference for the class A, new A. So this is the creation of the syntax for creation of the object. Next, through this object, we can access the methods. So A1 dot square is the method. So this method has one parameter. We have to pass the side value. Next, A1 dot rectangle, we have to pass the 2 parameters. A1 dot circle, we have to pass the radius. A1 dot triangle, we have to pass the 2 parameters, breadth and height. So here, all these areas will be printed. Why? Because we are invoking the method square. That means area of the square will be displayed. Rectangle. That means control goes to the rectangle method. So rectangle method is displayed. A1 dot circle. Control goes to the circle method. So this method will be displayed. A1 dot triangle. Control goes to the triangle method. So this will be displayed. So this is the demonstration of abstract classes as well as the abstract methods. So let us check the output here. program name, Java C abstract demo.java. So here area of the square is printed, area of the rectangle, area of the circle, area of the triangle. So all the areas of the different shapes are printed here by using the abstract class and abstract methods. So this is the output for this one, abstract classes. So this is the exercise 4. So this is the exercise 4. So any doubts on this? This is the exercise 5. So do you have any doubts? So exercise 5 is completed. So let us move to the exercise 6. So sixth exercise is also deals with the inheritance as well as the interfaces. Inheritance as well as the interfaces. Let us see the programs. So first one is usage of the super keyword. Usage of the super keyword. Okay. Next program is implement the interfaces. Implementation of the interfaces. Implementation of the interfaces as well as the implementation of the super keyword. So these two programs are the exercise 6. So let us check the super keyword. Let us check the main purpose of the super keyword. So the main purpose of super keyword is to differentiate the variables or method defined in the base class as well as the subclass. That means in the inheritance, what we are going to do is same method can be used by the subclass also. Suppose we have defined the method add. So that method add is defined in the superclass. Same method can be used by the subclass also. So there is a need to differentiate these two things. So in order to differentiate these things between the superclass and subclass, we will use the keyword super. So let us demonstrate this one. So let us check the usage of the super keyword here. So here I am defining the class A. So here I am defining the class A. In that I am defining the some variables I comma j. So I am using the constructor. I am defining the constructor to initialize the I value and j value. So I am initializing the I value and j value to the 0. I am initializing the I value to I and j values to the 0. So this is the constructor I have defined, constructor 1. Next I am defining the another constructor. Next I am defining another constructor under the class A. That means the class name and constructor names are same. So here this is the constructor. So here I am defining the another constructor. So this is the constructor overloading. Same constructor, but the parameter list is different. Here no parameters, but here we have the parameters. So here I am defining the I value as A, J value as B. So this is the second constructor I have defined, second initialization for the variables I comma j. Next I am defining the method show. So here I am printing the values of I and j. So here I am going to print the I value as well as j value. So this is the class A. So this is the class A. So the class A consists of two constructors, two initializations, and one method, one display method, one show method. So this is the these are the class members of the class A. So class A has two constructors and one method. So this is class A. Next I am defining the another class. Next I am defining the another class B. So check here. So here I am defining another class B. So which extends the properties of A. So inheritance. That means B, class B can have the values of I and J. Class B can utilize the class members of class A. That means this class B can access, suppose let us see this one. So this is the class B. So this is the class B. So the class B can access the class A members. So class A members. So here class A members are constructor A as well as constructor A with some parameters A comma B, and then method show. Method show. Method show. So these are the class members of class A. So the class B can have the access to these two constructors as well as the show method. So why? Because here I am using the concept of inheritance, extends. So class B extends class A. So the meaning of this extends is this one. The class B extends class A. That means class B can have the access for A, constructor A, and then show method. So the class B can easily access these members. So here I am defining some variable k, ijk. So ij values are defined here. I value and j values are initialized in the class A. So in the class B, I'm going to initialize the value for k. I'm defining the variable k. I'm defining the constructor B. I am defining the constructor B. So this is the constructor B. I am not passing the any values. So here I am initializing the k value to the 0. So here I am initializing the k value to the 0. So here we have written the super. Here we have defined the super. Why? Because here I am going to print the I value, j value, and k value. So here I have initialized the only k value. I have not yet initialized the j value and I value. So I values and j values are initialized in the class A. Initialized in the class A. So in order to understand the compiler, we are representing it with super keyword. Next, I am defining the another constructor int a comma int b. I am passing the three parameters here: I, j, k. Super of a comma b. So already a, b values are initialized in the previous class A. Just I am initializing the k value to the c. Initially, I value is initialized to a, j value is initialized to b, and now we are initializing the k value to the c. So already a, b values are initialized in the class A constructor. Next, I am defining the method show. So already show method is available in the class A. Again, method overloading. Again, we are using the same method. Same method, same parameter list. Method overriding. We can call it as method overriding. Void show. So here, in order to know the compiler, we are using the keyword super.show. That means already show method is defined in the superclass. Show method is available in the superclass. So there is a differentiation between the show method in the superclass and the show method in the subclass. There is a need to differentiate between these two things: show method in the superclass and show method in the subclass. So the compiler has to differentiate this. So to make the compiler task easy, we are representing it with the super keyword, super.show. So it means that already the method show is available in the class A. So here I am printing the k value. So in the previous show method, I am printing the I value and j value. So here I am printing the k value. So this is the class B. So here we have defined the class A and class B. So in the class A, we have defined the variables I comma j, I and j. In the class B, we are initializing the value k. Initializing the value k. So we are initializing by using the constructors, we are going to initialize the values. So here we are performing constructor overloading. We are taking the same constructor with different parameters. So let us define the driver class. So here I am defining the driver class, main class as super keyword. Class name is super keyword. So it has the main method. So here I am defining the object sub OB. Sub OB is the object of the class C, of the class B. Next, new B, I am passing the I, J, K values. I value is 1, J value is 2, K value is 3. I am passing the constructor parameters, constructor arguments. Next, I am printing the show method. I am invoking the show method by using the sub ob dot show. So this is the program to illustrate the concept of super keyword. So let us check the output here. Java C super keyword dot java. Super keyword dot java. So the output is, so we have invoked the only one show method. One show method. That means the control goes to the nearest loop. Nearest loop is this one, this method. So nearest loop is this one, void show. So here we got the super dot show. Here we got the super dot show. So it means that the control again goes to the super class method. That means in the class A we have defined the in the class A we have printed the I value and J value. So that is printed first. After that, this statement will be printed. So after that, this statement will be printed. So that is the advantages of super keyword. So let us see what happens if you don't use this super keyword. The super keyword can be used along with the methods as well as the variables also. So let us save this one, compile it, print it. So only K value is printed. Only K value is printed. IJ values are not printed. IJ values are not printed here. Only K value is printed. So in order to print the IJ values, we need a super. The compiler has to know that one. So that's why we have to write the super keyword. So see the difference between the previous output and this output. So whenever you use the super keyword, then only we will get the output like this. So if you don't give the super keyword, means it only the only the latest method show you only displayed. That is k value. Subclass method only displayed. So if you want to display the superclass method, we have to use the super keyword. So this is the output. So any doubts on this? So okay, let us move on to the next one. So next program is to demonstrate the interfaces. So we have seen the interfaces. So interface is nothing but it consists of the abstract methods as well as the some constant values. So that is the interface. Interface consists of some abstract methods or some constant values. So let us demonstrate this one. So here I am defining the class number. So here class name is number. So here I am declaring the variables x comma y. I am defining the variables x comma y. So this is the end of the class. Next I am defining the interface. The interface name is arithmetic. Arithmetic is the interface name. So in the interface I am defining the some methods, some abstract methods. Interface only consists of the abstract methods. So here I am defining the add and sub. Add method and sub method. Both these methods are the abstract methods. That means there is no definition of the method here. There is no body of the method here. Only method header is available. So these type of methods are known as abstract methods. So an interface consists of the abstract methods. So abstract methods or interface can be implemented by using the class. An interface cannot implement itself. There is a need for the class to implement the interface. In order to implement the interface, we need a class. An interface cannot implement itself. So that's why I am defining the another class. Another class as use interface is the class name. So which extends the number. So that means it can use the x value and y value. It can use the x value and y value. And implements is a keyword which is used to implement the interface. Implements arithmetic. Implements arithmetic. So this is the syntax for interface as well as the inheritance. So for inheritance we can use the extends. For interfaces we can use the implements. So interface inheritance can have only one class here. After implements we can have the n number of interfaces here. Arithmetic comma, array index out of bound comma, something comma. So we may have the n number of classes, but n number of interfaces, but in the extents we have only one superclass. We have only one class. So next I am defining the abstract method add as a plus b. I'm passing the arguments a comma b, and then subtract method I'm passing the arguments a comma b, and I'm performing the a minus b. So this is the two methods I have defined here. Next I am defining the main method here, public static void main method here. So here I am defining the main method here. So here I am defining the object UI for the class use interface. For the class use interface. So why? Because I have to access this add method as well as subtract method. So both these methods are in the class use interface. So that's why I am creating the object for the reference use interface. So I have created the object. Next I am printing the some statements. So addition, output of the addition is a plus b is ui dot add. I am invoking the method add. I am passing the parameters as 2 comma 3. ui dot subtract 2 comma 1. So this is the program to illustrate the concept of the interfaces. So interface consists of only abstract methods. The method definitions are not available in the interface. The method definitions are available in the some other class. So this is the illustration of the interface. Interfaces use the keyword implements. So let us check the output. Java C user interface.java. So addition of 2 plus 3 is 5, 2 minus 1 is 1. So this is the output. So this is the output. So here the program aim is to demonstrate the concept of the interface, how the interface is defined and how the interface is implemented and how the abstract methods are accessed. So all these things are discussed in this program. So this is the exercise 6. So this is the exercise 6. Let us move to the next exercise 7. So seventh exercise is exceptions. So we'll see later. Next exercise is exercise 8. Exercise 8, runtime polymorphism. First we will see this one. After that we can see the exception. So for exceptions we have two exercises, exercise 7 and exercise 9. So combinedly we can discuss after the runtime polymorphism. So let us check the exercise 8 now. So the 8th exercise consists of the runtime polymorphism. So runtime polymorphism. So runtime polymorphism is nothing but a dynamic method dispatch. So how the runtime polymorphism can be implemented? Polymorphism means more than one form. The method can have more than one form. Add a comma b, add a comma b comma c, add a comma b comma c comma d. So method name is same. The method behaves differently at different situations. That is polymorphism. So runtime polymorphism means that can be done at a time at the runtime. The four methods can be executed at the same time at the runtime. So this can be implemented by using the reference object of the superclass. So runtime polymorphism can be implemented by using the superclass object. So let us check this one. So already in theory I have discussed this one. So let us check the program. And the second one is write a case study on runtime polymorphism inheritance that implements the above problem. That means this is a theory. Write a case study means you have to write some example. That is not a program. You have to write some theory about the runtime polymorphism. So let us complete this one, 8th one. So let us see the example here. So I am defining the class bank and I am defining the method irate. I am defining the method irate which returns the value 0. At initially it will return the method returns the 0. So that is the class I have defined. Next I am defining the class SBI. That means this is the program for to print the interest rate for each bank: SBI, ICICI Bank, Axis Bank. So three banks has different different interest rates. So we have to, the aim of this program is to print the different interest rates for different banks. So here I am defining the SBI as class which extends the properties of bank. Next, in this I am defining the method irate, and it returns the interest rate as 5. It returns the 5. Initially, interest rate is 0. Next, I am overriding this method irate. Overriding this method irate and printing the interest rate as 5. Next, I am defining the another class ICICI. So uh, which extends the class bank. So it also overrides the method irate. So it returns the, so ICICI Bank interest rate is 6. So likewise, I am defining the another class, another bank, Axis Bank. So which also extends the properties from class bank. So I am going to override the method irate. So Axis Bank interest rate is 7. So here 5, here 6, here 7. So here I am going to define the 3 classes, SBI, ICICI, and then Axis Bank. So 3 different banks. So all these 3 banks inherit the properties from same bank, same bank, same bank. So this type of inheritance is known as, so this type of inheritance is known as not multi-level. Already we have seen the multi-level inheritance. So here the all these 3 classes, not single. Here all the 3 classes extends from the same superclass. All the 3 classes extends the properties from same superclass. In the multi-level means uh, each class extends the properties from different classes. Suppose here class A extends the class B. So here class A extends the class B. Here class D extends the class C. Here B, C, D. Different classes are there. But here we have the same class. What type of inheritance is this? ఇంకా మిగిలింది ఏంటో అదే చెప్పండి. Hierarchical inheritance. So this is the hierarchical inheritance. So we have the bank at the higher level. In the bank, all these SBI, ICICI, Axis, all these 3 banks extends the properties from bank. So this is the hierarchical inheritance. So I will define the main class and main method. So I am defining the main class. The main class name is runtime poly and main method. So here I am defining the object for each bank. For SBI, I am defining the object as S. For ICICI, I am defining the object as S. For Axis, I am defining the object as A. So let us see this one. So let us make some modifications here. So SBI rate is S dot I rate. So ICICI Bank I dot I rate. For Axis Bank A dot I rate. So here I have created the 3 objects for 3 different classes. 3 objects for 3 different classes. So here I am going to print the, I am going to invoke the irate method by using the object S. For SBI, S dot irate. For ICICI Bank, I dot irate. For Axis Bank, A dot irate. So let us check the output. So Chrome ఉందా, షేర్ అవ్వలేదా? ఇప్పుడు సో ఇక్కడ చూడండి. So here I have created the three objects for three banks. So I can access the irate method by using the object s dot irate for the SBA, I dot irate for the ICICI, a dot irate for the Axis Bank. So let us check this output. Let us see the program. I think the screen is not shared. See this program. So here I am defining the bank as the superclass. I am defining the method irate. So here I am defining the SBA, ICICS, Axis Bank, three different banks. So all these banks extends from the bank. So here I am overriding the method irate. Already irate is available. I am overriding irate as 6, irate as 5, irate as 7. Like that I have defined all these three classes. So I have defined the main method. So in that I am printing I am invoking all the methods for all the banks. So see the output. So this program is not at lab CD. So Java C runtime poly.java. Okay, compiled. So here the output is printed. SBI rate is 5. ICICI Bank interest rate is 6. Axis Bank interest rate is 7. So the output is displayed. But this is not a runtime polymorphism. The method irate has the different forms at different situations. That is polymorphism. But this is not the runtime polymorphism. This is just a polymorphism. The method exhibits different behavior at the different classes. We have created the three. For this, we have created three objects. So through that object, we are displaying the methods. So when you call this method s.irate, that is displayed. To display this irate value, the reference variable is I. So this can be called as compile time polymorphism. Compile time polymorphism. So whether the object I is available or not, the compiler has to recheck. Whether the A is available or not, the compiler has to recheck. So here for displaying for invoking the method, we are using the different object values, different objects. So, but in the runtime polymorphism, we have to use the same object. So if you use the same object for invoking the methods, then it will become the runtime polymorphism. So runtime polymorphism can be implemented by using the reference variable as, that means the reference object as superclass object. So here superclass is bank. So here I am creating the another object. So here I am creating the another object ref1, reference 1. Here I am creating the reference variable, that is ref1, that is of the type bank. So bank is a main class. Main class means superclass. So we have to create the reference variable for the superclass. For the superclass. Then I am assigning the S value to the reference one. Then I am assigning the reference. I am assigning the S value to the reference one. Then I am printing the interest rate. Here ref1.irate. Then interest rate for SBI will be printed. So here again I am defining the ref as I. So here ref1. Next again I am defining ref1 as A. Next ref1. So we can access or we can invoke the method irate by using the same object here. Check here ref1. Here also ref1. Here also ref1. So here we are accessing the method iterate. We are accessing the method iterate with the same variable, same reference variable or same object. So that object is of the type, the object is the reference for the superclass. Then only it can be, the output will be displayed. So if you define instead of bank, if you define the SBI means the output is not available. We don't get the output. If you give the ICIC means we don't get the output. If you give the access means we don't get the output. Whenever you give the bank, that means super class. Whenever you give the super class, then only this can be possible. That means polymorphism, runtime polymorphism can be implemented by using the superclass variable, superclass reference variable. We have to assign each time after printing the reference one, SBI rate, then we have to assign the ICICI bank I value to the reference one. Then we will print the reference one dot I rate. Next, we will assign the A value to the reference one. So here see the reference one. We are accessing the method by using the same variable, same object, same reference variable. So then we can achieve the polymorphism. We can achieve the runtime polymorphism. So this is the thing. Let us check the output. Let us save the program. So the program is saved. The program is compiled. The program is, we got the output. So this is the runtime polymorphism. So we have to implement the runtime polymorphism in this way. So is it okay? Okay, let us move to the next program. So we have completed the exercise 8. Next, we will go for the packages. So in the syllabus, after completion of the inheritance and interfaces, we got the packages. So we'll get the concept of packages. So let us check whether any program consists of the packages. After that, we will go for the exception handling. After that, we will go for the threads. So let us see exercise 12. So exercise 12. So let us see the exercise 12. Exercise 12 consists of the programs regarding the packages. Programs regarding the packages. So first two programs are theory. So write a Java program to illustrate the class path. So we have the two environment variables, path as well as the class path. Class as well as the class path. So compile the programs. Before compilation, you can, after downloading the Java and after installing the Java, we will set the environment variables, path and class path. So after setting those things, those two environment variables, we can compile and run the programs. So take any simple program and execute it. We'll get the output. So next one, write a case study on the including the class path in your OS environment of your package. So we have to write some theory regarding the class path and class path and path. So what is the importance of using the path and class path? So for path, we will use the bin folder address, bin folder as the path, and the class path we will use the lib folder, library Java library folder as class path. So we have to write some theory. First one and second one, we have to write some theory. Next one, write a Java program that import and use the user-defined packages in the previous problem. That means, so we have packages. So package is nothing but a collection of classes and interfaces. So package is nothing but a collection of classes. So packages are two types. First one is user-defined packages. Second one is predefined packages. So the package can be already defined in the Java library, that is util package, and then language package and time package. Already these packages we have discussed. So all these packages are predefined packages. So next one, user defined packages. So user can easily create his own packages. That packages can be called as user defined packages. So let us demonstrate the user defined packages. So how to create the user defined package and how to import that package into our application program. So let us see this. Already in theory, I have demonstrated this one. So let us see again. So the first step in creating the user defined packages is we have to create the folder. We have to create the folder. So see here. So I have created the folder calculator. So I have created the folder calculator. So the package name and the folder name should be same. Package name, I am going to create a package called calculator. I'm going to create the package called calculator. That's why I have created the folder calculator. I have created the folder. In this, I have created, in this I am creating the package. So how to create the package? So let us open in the edit plus so that you can get the, you can identify the colors very easily. So here first step is, so now you are going to create your own package. The syntax for creation of the package is the first line, the first statement in the program should be like this: package, package name, package, package name. Package is a keyword, calculator is the package name. So the folder name is calculator. That means we are going to create the calculator package. So this is the syntax for creation of the calculator package. So this can be treated as the package. All this program can be treated as the package. So next, in the package consists of classes. So I am defining the class. The package consists of classes, number of classes. So here in this calculator class, I am defining the class as calc. Calc is the class name here. Calc is the class name here. So the class consists of, the package consists of classes. The class consists of methods. So this is the hierarchy. In the most abstract way, we can say that a package consists of the class. The class consists of the method. So here I am defining the method add, return a plus b. I am performing the addition. I am writing the method for subtraction. I am writing the method for division. I am writing the method for multiplication. So return a by b. I am writing the method for modulus. Return a modulo b. So I am defining the 3, 4, 5 methods. So here I am defining the 5 methods, 5 calc methods. So this is the package I have defined. So package is nothing but a class. We have to write the class. So here we don't write the public static void main. In the package, we don't get the public static void main. In the application program, we will get the public static void main. So this package can be imported to the other program, other application program. So in the package, we'll write like this. Only the package consists of the classes. The package doesn't consist of the main method. Public static void main does not come in this class calc. So this is the simply creation of the package. So now the package is created. So after creation of the package, you have to compile it. You have to compile it. javac calc.java. If the compilation is done successfully, then the package is created. Then package is created. So let us see this. So in Java cd calculator, all the package names should be in small letters. So we don't we don't get in the capital letters. So all the package name should be small letters. 1 minute. So we have to, if you want to compile means you have to go to that folder. So the folder is calculator folder. So in this Java C, the class name is calc.java. So the program is compiled. That means the package is successfully created. So let us move to the application program. So this package can be imported to the our program. We can import our own packages also, like import java.util.asterisk. We can import the programs. We can import the packages in that way. Likewise, we can import our own package also. So the program is let us take some application program calc main. So this is my application program. So this is my program. So here I am going to import the package. So the package name is calculator. The package name is calculator. So how can you import? Import space package name dot asterisk. That means all the classes available in this package can be imported to our program. Import java.util.asterisk. That is the generally we will import like this. So our own package can be imported like this. Import calculator.asterisk. Then calc main is the main class, public static void main method. So I am creating the object obj1 of type calc. So calc is a class which is not available in this. Calc is a class which is not available, but the calc is a class defined in the package calculator. So calculator package consists of this method calc. So we are creating the reference object for the calc. Next, we are going to access the methods, all these methods. obj1 dot add 10 comma 20, subtract 30 comma 20, multiply 2 comma 5, division 55 comma 5, mod 55 comma 5. So this is how we can access the methods sub, mul, div, mod. So all these methods are defined in the package, defined in the calculator package. So not in this program. So we are importing that package. That means we are importing the all the classes in the package calculator. So in that we have one class, that is calc is the class. So in that class we have so many methods: add method, subtract method, multiplication method, division method, modulus method. So all these methods can be invoked by using the object, that is obj1. So this is the program. So this is the application program which illustrate the importing of the user defined package. So let us compile this one. Java. So you have to change the folder cd. The program is at Java C, calc main.java. So the program is compiled and we got the output. Addition of 10 comma 20 30, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus division. So this is the demonstration of the user-defined packages. So demonstration of the user-defined package. This is how we can create our own packages and we can import that packages to different application programs. So any doubts? So let us move to this browser. So we have completed the exercise 12 also. So we have completed the exercise 12. Then we have left with the exceptional handling. We have completed the packages and then next concept is exception handling. So for exception handling, we have two exercises, exercise 7 and exercise 9. 8 is already completed. Exercise 7 and exercise 9. So exercise 7 consists of 2 experiments. Exercise 9 consists of 4 experiments. So we have 4, 5, 6 programs to execute regarding the exception handling. So let us start the exercise 7. So the first program is write a Java program that describes the exception handling mechanism. That means a simple program to illustrate the exception handling. So how the try block will be, how the catch block will be, and how the finally block will be. So that is the aim of this program. Next program, write a Java program illustrating multiple catch classes. So each try block can have the corresponding catch block. So there is a possibility of the multiple catch blocks. So multiple catch blocks can be in after the Java version 8, multiple catch blocks can be handled by using the Boolean OR operator. By using the Boolean OR operator, we can have the multiple catch blocks in a single block. That is possible. That we will see now. Multiple catch blocks. Catch 1, catch 2. Like that, we can have the multiple catch blocks. So let us see the simple exception handling mechanism and we will move to the multiple catches. So let us check this one. So this is a simple program to illustrate the concept of try block, catch block, and finally block. So let us see the program. So I am importing the IO package and then I am creating the class exception test. That is the class name. So this is the main method, public static void main. And here I am defining the array A and array A. I am just declaring the array A with some new operator. So the array size is 2. The array size is 2. Next, here I am using the try block. Here I am using the try block. So this is the try block. So that means there is a possibility of getting exception. There is a possibility of getting the exception in this statement. That's why I have placed this statement in between the try block. So here I am going to access the A of 3. A of 3. That means A of the array index starts with 0. A of 0, A of 1, A of 2, A of 3, A of 3. A of 3 means we are getting the fourth element. But the array size is 2. Array index out of bound exception. Actually, array size is 2, but we are going to access the third element in the array. So that the third element is not available in the array. So there is an exception. Then corresponding to this catch block. That means there is a possibility of exception. So if that exception arises, how do you handle that? So that can be placed in the catch block. So that index is, the class is array index out of bound exception. The object is, exception object is E. So here I am printing that E value. Here I am printing the E value. So this is the catch block. So Java follows the termination model. That means whenever the exception arises, the control goes to the controls, terminates that block and execute the catch block. Then finally means, so whether the exception arises or the exception not arises, the finally block will always execute irrespective of the exception. Irrespective of the exception, the finally block will be always executed. So here I am assigning the A of 0 value as 6. That means first element value is 6. Now I am printing the first element A of 0. Next I am printing some statement. The finally statement is executed. So this is the finally block. Generally in exception handling, we will get the try block, catch block and finally block. Try block means the possibility of getting the exception. So that statements will be placed in between the try block. So if any exception arises, how do you handle that exception? By using the catch block. So immediately to the try block, catch block will be placed. So after that, we can have the finally block. That means if the exception arises or not, always finally block will be executed. So let us check the output. So the program name is cd space lab. We have to change the directory. Javac exep test.java. The program is compiled. Let us check the output. So this is the output. So we are getting the exception. So we are going to access the A of 3. That means the third element is not available. Why? Because array size is only 2. So exception erased. That means immediately catch block will be executed. After the catch block, finally block will be executed. So let us make this as change the program as A of 2. Let us see what happens. Let us see what happens. So let us make it as 1. Let us compile it, run it. So here we don't get any exception. We don't get any exception. The element is printed. That means array size is 2. That means A of 0, A of 1, 2 elements. A of 0, A of 1. So we are going to print the A of 1. That means A of 1 value is available. That means there is no chance of getting the exception. So that's why we don't get the catch block is not executed here. Catch block is not executed here. But in the both the cases, the finally block will be executed. In the case of exception, the finally block will be executed. In the case of not getting the exception also, finally block will be executed. So this is how the exception handling can be done. So any doubts in this? So let us move to the next one. Multiple catch. So let us move to the multiple catches. So multiple catch means multiple catch blocks. So there is a chance of getting the multiple exceptions in a single program. That means those two exception has to be handled. That means if you get the 2 exceptions means we needed 2 catch blocks. If you are getting 3 exceptions means we needed 3 catch blocks. So that is the concept of multiple catches. So let us identify this program. So I am defining the main class, main method. Okay. So I'm declaring some variables num1, num2 and result as 0. And I am defining some array. Array size is 5. I am declaring some variables and one array. So in the try block, this is the try block. So this is the try block I have defined. In this, I am assigning the values to the array. A of 0, 0, A of 1, 1, A of 2, 2, A of 3, 3, A of 4, 4. I am assigning the values to the array. That means array size is 5. That means 5 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 elements are entered. Next, I am printing the result value. Result equal to num1 by num2. Number 1 is 10. Number 2 is 0. 10 by 0, there is a chance of exception, arithmetic exception. And then I am printing the result. If it is not so, then result has to be printed. Next, corresponding to this, 2 catch blocks are there. Corresponding to this, we have 2 catch blocks. So corresponding to this, we have 2 catch blocks. That is, there is a chance of getting this exception, division by 0 exception. That is arithmetic exception. So there is a chance of array index out of bound exception. So if you give the array 5 is equal to 5 means, then we will get this exception. Then we will get this exception. So there is a chance of getting the 2 catch blocks, multiple catch blocks. If the 2 exception means we needed 2 catch blocks. If 3 exceptions means we needed 3 catch blocks. So this is the simple program to illustrate the concept of multiple catches. So let us check the output. Java C multiple catch.java. Program is compiled. So output is division by 0 exception. So up to this the program is compiled. So here while coming to this one, while executing this statement, we get the division by 0 error. The compiler checks for this. Which catch block can handle this one? We have 2 catch blocks. Among 2 catch blocks, which catch block can handle this exception? So that catch block will be executed. So that catch block will be executed. That is division by 0. That is executed. So let us make it as, let us change this program and check the output. Enter another element. Enter another element into the array. So let us see what happens. Now we'll get the array out of bound exception. So whenever this statement executing, exception is erased. Whenever the exception arises, the control goes to the catch block, corresponding catch block. So this will be executed. So these statements are not executed. These statements are not executed. That is the concept of termination model. So whenever the exception arises, the control goes to the catch block. So that is the concept of a termination model and multiple catch blocks. So this is the, so you see, this is the exercise 7. This is the exercise 7. Exception handling mechanism as well as multiple catch classes. So let us move to the exercise 7. 8 already we have discussed. Next, exercise 7. So exercise 7 is completed. Exercise 8 is completed. Exercise 9 is user defined exceptions. So we can have our own exceptions also. Let us check that one. So in this we have 4 programs. First one is illustration of the throw. Next one is finally block, illustration of the finally block. Next one, creation of the Java built-in exceptions. Java program for creation of the user-defined exception. So we have built-in exceptions as well as user-defined exceptions. So user-defined exceptions are created by the programmer. Java built-in exceptions are the exceptions available in the Java library. In the exception class, we have so many exceptions. So that is Java built-in exception. For this, we can check the arithmetic exception, division by 0 exception. So user-defined exceptions, we can create our own exception. Finally block. Finally block means already we have explained in this program. Whether the exception is erased or not, the finally block will always execute. So let us make the throw. Let us illustrate the concept of throw. So there are two keywords, throw and throws. So throw is a keyword which is used to throw the exception. If you know the exception name, we can throw the exception. Next one is throws. So throws is a keyword which is used along the method definition, which is used in the method header. That means public static void main string args throws IO exception. Throws IO exception. So along with the method, if you want to throw the exception, means this method can throw the exception. In that cases, we can use the keyword throws IO exception. So within the method, if you want to throw the exception, means we can use the keyword throw. So let us see the program for this throw. So let us see the first one. First program is about throw. So let us see the program. So this is the program to illustrate the concept of throw as well as the user-defined exception also. So the same program can be used in the two different cases also, two programs. So for two programs, this program is enough. That is, first program is to illustrate the concept of throw, first one. Next one, to illustrate the user-defined exception. Exception can be defined by the user also. User can create his own customized exceptions also. How the user can create that one. Then illustration of the throws. So all this comes in this program. So throws, and creation of the customized exceptions. So let us see the program. So here I am creating the class no balance exception. So all the whatever the classes you created in the exception that can extends the exception class. So you have to write this one. This is the first step in creation of the user-defined packages, user-defined exceptions. So if you want to create your own exception, means you have to extend your class from the exception class. Then we need a constructor to initialize your own exception. So I am defining my constructor. The class name is no balance exception. So the constructor name is also no balance exception. So it can pass the string. That means we will get the string output, array index out of bound exception. That is a string. That's why I am passing the parameter as string. That is the variable name is, the argument is problem. So here we have to write the super of that variable, that object. super of problem. That why? Because so we are extending the properties from exception. We are extending the properties from exception. That means this exception class is a subclass of exception. This no balance exception is a subclass of exception. That means in the exception we have the some methods. So same method name can be possible here also. That's why to differentiate that we are using the super of problem. So I am closing the constructor, I am closing the class. So up to this is common for every user defined syntax, user defined exception. So every customized exception, this is the syntax. Next, I am defining the main class. So public static void main method throws some exception. So here I am declaring some variable balance equal to 100, withdraw equal to 1000. So I have the balance of 100 rupees, but I am going to withdraw the 1000 rupees. So there is a exception. So that is I am writing my own exception. That is if balance less than withdraw. If balance less than withdraw, if balance less than withdraw, we have to do this one. That is I am going to create the exception object. I am going to create the exception object. That means we are going to create the new exception. That means new object. So exceptions can be treated as object. That means we have to create the object. Syntax is this one, creation of the object. So class is no balance exception. E is equal to new no balance exception. The parameter is no balance. No balance please is the string I have passed. Problem. No balance no balance please is the exception that will throw. Next, this is the syntax for creation of the exception object. Next, I am throwing the exception. Next, I am throwing the exception. Here, I have created the exception. Here, I am throwing that exception. That means the exception is erased. That means the compiler know that there is an exception. We have to search for the catch block. That is throw E. E is the object we have created. The user defined exception is no balance exception. So this is the illustration of user defined exception as well as throw keyword as well as throws keyword. So else, if there is no exception means you can withdraw the money. That is the syntax. Permission. So let us check the output. Java C. The programming name is throw example.java. Program is compiled. So the exception is thrown. I have given the balance as 100, withdraw is 1000. So the exception is raised. The exception is no balance please. This is the exception. This is the string I have returned as an exception. So this is how you can create your own exceptions. First step is we have to extend the exception class. Next, we have to create the constructor. In that, we have to use the super keyword. And then we have to create our own public static void main. Then in the exception, we have to create our exception object. We have to create our exception object like normal object. And then we have to throw that exception. Then we have to throw that exception. So this is the general procedure to be followed in the creation of user defined exceptions. So that is the first program. Next one. So finally example. That means already we have seen finally. So whether the exception is erased or not, the finally block is always executed. So already we have seen this one. Next one. arithmetic exception demo. Predefined exceptions. So utilization of the predefined exceptions. How can you utilize the predefined exceptions? Already this is also we have seen. So predefined exception is arithmetic exception. Generally division by 0, we can use all these cases. This is a predefined exception, arithmetic exception that we know. So next one, user defined exception that we have seen now. So this is some different program, same as that. So here see the, so here the aim is to create our own exception. So here first step is the class has to extend from the exception, that is done. Next we have to create a constructor to initialize that, that is also done. A is equal to B. Next I am defining the another method, toString method, return my exception, that is to convert the whatever the thing you have given. Here we have given the integer value. To convert the integer to the string value, we can use the toString method, that is this one. So I am defining the another class, user defined exception. I am creating some variables xk, and I am creating some method in getInt. See what he's going to do. So buffer reader D, new buffer reader, new input buffer reader. So here is creating some object D. He is printing some printf statements, So he I am creating one variable line of type string. So if the line is equal to d dot read line, not equal some condition, we are checking some condition. If x equal to 5, then congrats, you have generated an exception. If the x value is 5, then we have to throw the new exception. Throw new exception name, that exception. Else wrong guess. Corresponding to that, we can write the catch blocks. So same program, same thing. So I have seen the thrown example. So this program is enough for that one also. So here also we are creating our own exception, simple one. So if, in that program we are reading from buffer reader. We have seen some multiple catch blocks. So that is some long program. We can use this one, creation of the our own exception. So next one. So we have completed the exercise 9. We have done with the exercise 9. So in total, we have completed the up to 9. Up to 9, we have completed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 completed. So we have left with the 10 and 11. So 10 and 11 are regarding the threads. So we are not completed the threads concepts. So that we will discuss later in coming sessions. After that, we have seen the one more exercise 12 also. So we have completed exercise 12 also. Exercise 12 also. So that means in total we have completed 10 exercises. In total we have completed 9. Up to 9 we have completed everything. 10 and 11 are left for coming sessions. 12 is completed. That means 10 experiments are completed. 10 lab exercises are completed. So we have left with the 2. 10 are completed. We have left with the 2. That 2 is threads. Thread exercises 2. And we have the another 2. That is regarding the applets and event handling. So that is not there in the syllabus. In the theory, we don't have the applets and event handling. So that if you want to learn that one, you can learn yourself. Applets and event handling. So I will complete up to 12 programs, up to threads. So we have 14 lab exercises. So we will complete 12. We'll try to complete the 12 lab exercises. That 2 lab exercises are left exercises are applets and event handling. So that you can learn yourself. That theory syllabus is not there in the syllabus. So you can learn if you want. So in the external or internal, you will get these 12 exercises. 12 exercises. In the external or internal lab examinations, you will get the 12 exercises. So 12 exercises. So you will get the any of the 2 exercises, any of the 2 programs, any 2 programs you will get. So this is the things regarding the lab. So we'll complete the lab in the next coming Thursday. So meanwhile, we will complete the all these things. Meanwhile, you complete the observations. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me. So in theory, we have just started the threads. We need some more classes to complete the syllabus. We have to complete the threads as well as the database connections. We need nearly, I think, 10 classes. We need nearly 10 classes to complete the syllabus. I think we have some time. So final year examinations are from 12th. Internals, I think you know. Final year examinations are from internal 1 and internal 2 starts from 12th of this month. The externals are from 16th. So after completion of that, third year will start. After completion of that, second year will start. That means maybe at the end of the July. Maybe at the end of the July, you may come to the college. You have to come to the college for attending the lab internals and theory internal exams and external exams. So prepare yourself to come to the college at the end of this month. So any doubts? Meanwhile, also those who have not written the assignments, so complete the assignments also. Okay, thank you.